My name is John, and today I wanted to do a video to do two things. The first one is actually just to try out a new video camera and light I have here and see how they work, and also see how the new video editing capture card and software I have works. But in order to test all that out, I thought I would do a video on what do I carry in my backpack. This has been something I have thought about doing for quite a while, because it's taken me years to decide what it is I really like to carry in here. And I think a lot of people might be interested in what my rationale was and what those decisions have been. They'll be different for everyone, but this might give you some good ideas. Okay, so what do you carry your backpack for? If you're going to go out, let's say you're going to drive someplace, you're car camping, and then you're going to have to walk a couple of 100 meters from there, far enough to where maybe you don't want to just go back and forth to your vehicle all the time. You want an easy way to carry stuff in, but it's going to be a couple of days. You have resources nearby, you've got your vehicle nearby. You want to be comfortable and have a good time. What you would carry in your pack for that situation is very different from what you might carry if you thought you're going to be having to rely on that pack in unknown circumstances, without support, places where survival is more important than comfort. With that in mind, what I'm going to cover today is I developed what I carry in this pack with the idea that I wanted to have a backpack always ready to go, such that if I'm going out, I go out on hunting trips, I go to visit friends in remote cabins, sometimes in the province. I do drives myself up to my own property. These can be, very late. These are 10, 12, 13-hour drives. What if your vehicle breaks down at the side of the road and you're 40 kilometers, 50 kilometers to the nearest town, and you need to spend a night out there? What if I want to go someplace for a weekend and go fishing, and it's nice weather and everything's great, but I go in there and a forest fire starts on the road and I'm stuck in there. I have to spend an extra couple of days in there. What if it's summertime? What if it's wintertime? I'm fairly lucky. Where I live in the Pacific Northwest, in the greater Vancouver area, winters are not incredibly cold or harsh. Summers aren't incredibly hot. Water is generally available. There's a lot of edible wild plants. There's a lot of small game. There's a lot of fish. So what I had come up with that I carry in this pack is something that for me is good 4 seasons in the local area. The idea was I wanted something with 72 hours of sustainability in here to give me shelter, food, basic resources. If I had to spend longer than 72 hours, I could probably do it okay. And so the emphasis is more on reliability and robustness than necessarily on comfort. So with that out of the way, I think a lot of the decisions later on as to what I carry are going to make more sense. Let's start by talking about the pack itself. I've used a lot of different kind of backpacks in my life. This, I've decided, I've gone with an internal frame pack. I used to like external frame packs. I still do if you're going to carry a lot of weight. But they tend to be bulky. They get hung up in brush if you're walking through it. And internal frame packs have gotten cheaper, better, and sort of just out of simplicity. A lot of the new ones also, I should point out, have a lot of side pockets. Old internal frame packs used to be just like one big bag and it was hard to organize stuff. But now you can get a pretty nice one, not very expensively. So, the one I show here currently is not the first iteration of this pack, nor is it even the pack that I like the best, but after years of service, some things failed on my last one. And so what I have here is a 65-liter Cordura, ripstop Cordura internal frame with an adjustable suspension system, with a good hip belt, good shoulder padding. You're going to want all of that because if you're going to try to put 72 hours of supplies and food in here, it's going to be heavy. It's going to be heavier than you want, and realistically, you want this as light as possible. No matter what people say, like to brag on how heavy their packs are, you really want your pack to be light. Okay, 65 liters for me was kind of the minimum space. It would be nice to have a 70 liter, but I can fit everything reasonably in 65 and it's not overly crushed or overly compact. Although if you wanted to go a little less costly on some of the contents, then a 70-liter pack would be useful, because often in backpacking, cost equates to size or compactness of something, and for less money you can get something equally good, just bulkier. So I've often paid money to get small here, and you might not want to do that. This particular one is a Teton Sports Explorer 4000. They're off Amazon. They're cheap. They're about $85, $90, and pretty good quality. Anyways, no particular liking for it. It has some features I do like. In particular, there are some outside mesh loop connectors. I'd like it even better if it had military-style MOLLE connectors, but there are things I like to tie into the outside of my pack. Okay, pack itself. I said tied to the outside. Well, right away you'll notice a couple of things. One is a small axe. So that's over here. And let me pop this out without trying to make the pack fall over here. The axe goes through a loop down there, and it's in a plastic carrier. This plastic carrier can also double as a belt clip and carrier. So this is a real small, I think this is a 1.5 pound hatchet. It's useful for chopping wood, obviously. This particular one actually has what's actually designed to be a small hammerhead, including a small claw hammer for removing nails. If you're suddenly stuck someplace for a week in the brush and you find some scrap wood with some nails in it, you might want to recover those nails to use in helping build some sort of bushcraft shelter. You never know. A continuous trait here is multi-purpose items. So if I can get a small axe which can also serve that function, I find that generally more useful than one that only has one function. So small axe and a belt clip to carry it, and it's outside where it's rapidly accessible, but by going through the ice axe loop here it doesn't flop around. The other thing you'll notice externally, and this I really do suggest people carry externally on their pack, is my primary hunting knife. It makes it really quick to get to. I just drop the pack, pull it out, and here we go. This particular one is the Gerber. It's one of the Bear Grylls series. What's handy about it? Well, again, it's multi-purpose. Normally, you don't want to use the pommel of your knife to hammer things, but this one, again, is intentionally built to withstand that. Lightweight things. You can use this on a tent peg, you can use this on something small. Anything bigger, you've got a better hammer. But for light things, comes with a little whistle on a lanyard, doesn't add much weight. I like fixed blade, not tremendously long. This is long enough if you have to skin even a large animal. It's a good size for doing wood processing. This does have a compound blade, so it has a straight blade section and it has a serrated section. The serrated section is both good if you have to cut through synthetic fibers, nylon, things like that. It's also useful for shredding small pieces of wood to get some nice little frilly bits, like a feather stick, for starting fires. However, bear in mind, these serrated sections are very hard to sharpen. The straight part is good to sharpen. This is stainless. I'm not crazy generally about stainless steel in knives. I don't find they hold as good an edge as high carbon steel, but they need less care and attention, and generally I have found this holds a good edge. I've been pretty happy with it. It has a couple of other features that are handy. One is it does come with a small ferro rod for striking fires. These take practice to know how to use, especially these little ones, but with practice, they do work. This would be definitely a backup ferro rod. Not my first choice, but it's always there. It's ready to go. Also, very nice, this has a small diamond hone right here, which I can use to keep this sharp, and I can also use on my axe. So, and it can be untied from the outside of the pack. I can put that on my belt if I want to carry it around for the day. And it's got a very nice sheath, which keeps it out of the way, keeps it safe. I'm not going to cut myself, and it's very solid in there. It's not going to come out. I've carried this on the outside of packs for 4 years now, and it has never come loose or dropped off. Okay, so much for the outside of the pack. What do we have inside? Well, let's try doing this by sections. Before I go further, there is one other thing on the outside of this pack. It's over here. And you'll have to excuse the clumsiness. The pack wants to fall over backwards on the bed, so I'm having to prop it up with one hand and talk to the camera. I have my canteen on the outside here. And over the years, I have mostly carried plastic canteens. They're cheap, they're reliable, but they're not incredibly lightweight, and you can't heat stuff in them. It'd be nice to have a metal canteen sometimes. And so about a year ago, I really splurged and I went for, let's disconnect this. This is a Keith model titanium canteen. These are very expensive. This is definitely a luxury item for camping. There are aluminum canteens that are very nice, not quite as light, not quite as strong, but they're equally nice and you can heat stuff with. But this was, I really wanted to treat myself. It comes with a nice carrying case. When you pop that open, a couple of particular nice things on it. One is, I added this in myself, but it's a titanium folding spork. You'll see why that's handy with this in a moment. Try to put this down without having a disaster. Okay, there's the canteen itself. Obviously, there's a D-ring device here on the lid, so you can partly unscrew this to where it's still holding, but there's a vapor gap. You could tie a string to that, and you can dangle this directly over a fire and boil water if you need to sterilize it, or maybe you just want hot water for a cup of tea or a cup of coffee. Okay, but the nice thing with this, in addition to the canteen itself, it has a GI style little cook pot, also in titanium, so very strong, very lightweight, and the really nice touch, here's a lid. Now, so the reason I carry this all together, along with that little titanium spork, is that I can use this to cook a meal. If I get something I like a can of food, or an MRE, something like that, I can boil water either in this, or in the canteen. I can heat food in this. A lot of times when I'm going to do something like an MRE, I'll put a little bit of water in here. I stand the MRE pouch in there. I can put this in the fire, pull out the pouch when it's ready to eat, and I can use the hot water to make tea all with one thing. And I have this. All I have to carry is just the canteen there. I can clip that on my belt if I'm not carrying my pack, or it's on the outside of my pack for quick access. Use it as a coffee cup, whatever. Pricey, bit of a luxury, but I like it. Okay, let's move on to the bottommost container on the backpack, which is where people traditionally put things like, usually I think that's where people put their sleeping bags. So I put a lot of my shelter and sleep stuff in there. Let's open this up. Okay, well first off I'm going to go straight to this. This serves as my sleeping bag, and I've carried either lightweight sleeping bags in there, but recently I've gone to carrying one of these. These are out of Poland from a company called Helicontex, and this is a Swagman roll, what they call an advanced poncho liner, or a whoopee in kind of U.S. military parlance. A poncho liner is kind of these cheap blankets with grommets in the corners that you can tie into your USGI style poncho and roll yourself up in that as a makeshift sleeping bag. I've had some. They're fairly nice, but they're not the greatest, and you can't really use them as anything other than a blanket. This has been described instead as being kind of the Swiss Army knife of blankets. Let me show you why. So they're available in a bunch of different particular patterns. I believe this is called the Pencott Wildwood. And in one format, sort of as I pulled it out of here now, it's just a great big blanket kind of thing. It's got these toggles in the corners. Those are designed to lock through the grommet holes in a poncho. So now you can take your rainproof poncho, and now you've just made it into a rainproof shell with a blanket. Okay, but it's got a couple of other things. You'll notice that there is a zipper here, And above that zipper, there's actually kind of a hidden pocket type thing, and within that hidden pocket, there's a hood that comes out and a hole. So, while it's open like this, I can put the whole thing on, and I'm probably getting out of camera here, so let me get back on camera. You can put the whole thing on. It's got clips, adjustable clips. Those are useful. Also, I think if you want to use this as a underquilt on a hammock, you can use that to clip in. But in this mode, you clip them in. And now, that brings us in around you. Let me step back here. See if you can see me back here. All right. So, now I have something. I have a zippered chest pocket for getting stuff into. I'm very warm. This hangs here. My arms are free to move around. I have a hood I can bring up. I have a drawstring for pulling that around. The outer fabric of this is coated with a Teflon water repellent material. It is not absolutely waterproof, but through like a light shower, it just beads up and goes right off. It's filled with an extremely efficient insulation material, Climate Shield Apex. This is very warm. I've been down to like 4 Celsius just sitting around in a light shirt, and you put this on as your jacket and you can be very warm. Okay, so you can wear it like this. I said you can clip it into your poncho as normal. What else you can do is, the reason you have a pocket for the hood is because you tuck that in there, so now you no longer have any drafts or holes or whatever. And there is a zipper that runs all around the outside of the whoopee. So let me find where the zipper starts. It's much easier if you're out and around and not trying to do this in front of a camera. Here we go. Okay, so I can grab that zipper, zip it around, and look at what I've now got. I now have a sleeping bag, and I can tell you, for me, this is a comfortable sleeping bag, down to about 6 or 7 Celsius by itself, assuming you have a suitable ground underpad, so you don't have a lot of conduction out through the ground. But it's equally good as any sort of 7 degrees Celsius sleeping bag, but it's lighter and it's more flexible. It's a little, some people, if you're very large, claim it's a little narrow. I'm not exactly a real small guy, 5'9", maybe a little on the chunky side even, and I find it very comfortable. As I was saying, with the hood tucked in here, there's no air gap, you don't have any cold leaks through there, and it's very comfortable. And something else I should point out, this is directly washable. Just wash and dry. The insulation in there likes it. It doesn't move around. There's no weird stitching to create baffles, and so there's no cold points along that. And again, now your water repellent shell is on the outside. You can, of course, do this and use the tabs to put this inside your poncho to add additional water repellency and a little bit of heat retention as well. Okay, so that serves both as a jacket and as a sleeping bag. But I said it was only good to about 7 Celsius. I've been down overnight as low as minus 11 Celsius with what I'm going to show you here. Not the most pleasant night I ever had. I kind of lost feeling in my toes on one foot for about 4 weeks afterwards. But it wasn't the worst night I've ever had either, and it shows you can do it. But the point is, sometimes you want to add some thermal improvement to that sleeping bag. So, I also carry, these are the SOLs, Survive Outdoors Longer. Some of us suspect SOL may stand for something else, but this is their Escape Bivy. SOL makes several grades of kind of not exactly disposable, but kind of light use bivy sacks. This is the mid-range one. The cheapest ones are non-breathable. They work, but you get really a lot of humidity buildup inside. It's not very nice. I carry one in my truck as an absolute backup, but they're not great. This is the first layer of their breathable type ones. They're about $35. They're kind of a Tyvek-like sort of material, but breathable, and they do have a zipper halfway down one side. They're aluminized on the inside, and what you can do is you just pack your whoopee converted to a sleeping bag down inside of this and zip yourself up. This is now also waterproof but breathable. You can just have rain come right on this and you're good. And with the two of those together, this is good down to freezing or a couple of degrees below Celsius for me. Okay, with nothing additional, and that's not with wearing a toque or heavy socks or thermal clothes inside. I can do all that as well and add still some more. So with this and some clothing I'm going to have in here, I'm good down to about -5 to -7 Celsius, and I can do it in stages. If it's warm, I use that. If it's colder, I add layers. Much like you do with clothing, your sleep system can be layered. Okay, so well, it'd be nice to have some place to sleep under. To do that, rather than carry a tent, I like tents, especially in an area with a lot of bugs. Believe me, I like tents, but remember I said I wanted to be able to sustain myself for 3 days with this pack. Space is at a premium. A tent is too bulky, too heavy for me. So instead, I have a sill nylon tarp. This is one of the integral ones. This is the sill tarp 2. I believe it's an 8 foot by 10 foot. I'm not going to take it out of here. It's just a nylon tarp, but it's a silicone impregnated. It is absolutely waterproof. These are fantastic. They have contact loops all around the edges and one in the center. There are a lot of ways you can pitch this in really bad conditions. My favorite is to get an overhead hoist point with a line and do it as a trigonal pyramid, which is completely enclosed on all 3 sides. It's snow shedding, it's rain shedding, it's windproof, and you can just fit yourself and your pack inside there. The tarp even folds over in a few places to give you a couple patches of dry floor. I've done that. The night that was -11, I was in snow. That's what I did. It was windy. I was actually pretty good inside. There's a lot of other ways to pitch a tarp like this. What are known as half plow, A-frame, a lot of different styles depending on how long you want to use it and type of wind and rain conditions. You don't have a bug screen, so bugs are an issue, but if you want to just get out of the rain and out of the wind, you can do it with just this, plus, of course, line to tie it up with. So, rather than using paracord, which everyone else likes, I like paracord, but it's kind of bulky. This is actually a Dyneema or a Spectran guy line specifically for tarps. This is the type with the little reflective bits in it so you don't trip over it in the night. I like to get a 100-foot section of this. I make 5 2-foot sections, 5 10-foot sections, all bundled up here, and 1 40-foot section. I find that's a nice combination of lengths, and using those I can do all sorts of different tarp pitches without having to worry about cutting or wasting line. So these are all pre-made. A lot of them already have bowlines in one side to make for really quick setups. I have 2 really lightweight carabiners pre-clipped on the 40-foot, partly so I can tell which is the 40-foot length when I pull it out. But I can also use those. I do Prusik knots with some of the 2-foots for one type of really quick setup, and I can have my tarp up and done. If there's a couple of support trees and I want to do like an A-frame type of shelter, I can have everything up and guide in 2 or 3 minutes real easily. Okay, so guy lines for the tarp and tent pegs. Again, trying to go for lightweight. I've gone with the aluminum, what are known as the Y type, because the cross section would look like a Y. These actually have an advantage over that. Each of the veins is curved. That gives it additional strength that gets bending. These are not very expensive. They're some sort of aluminum alloy. They're extremely light. They're extremely strong. 10 of them in this bag. I need different kinds of pitches. I need up to about 8. So 10 is a couple in excess, but they're very light. And I don't think it was more than like $10 or $12 for this whole sack of these. And they'll work, because they have large bearing surfaces, they'll work in sand, light gravel, They'll work a little bit in snow if you pack them in appropriately, and they'll obviously work in sort of soft soils. If I'm not in any of those situations, then I have to go for other ways like rocks or tying off to trees. But these will work in a lot of situations. They're cheap, they're light. Well, I also talked about having an appropriate underlay, and that's not just to make the ground feel better, but it's important for insulation. I really like things like thermarests, but they're big, they're bulky, and frankly, they're quite heavy. Inflatable underpads have a disadvantage, of course. They can puncture. I have never had one puncture, but they certainly could. So it's important to be careful where you put them down. Maybe that's why I haven't had one puncture. But most of them also come with repair kits. Know how that repair kit works and how to use it, because a night without one of these is going to be very uncomfortable, particularly on snow or cold surfaces. In a search to get smaller and lighter, I've actually gone, this is an inertia, what's called an X frame. And this little tiny bag about the size of a pop can contains, there's a little rubber bulb here, and this is an entire sleeping bag. You'll see it is skeletonized. So what this does is when it inflates up, which you can do by mouth, you get about 80% of the way, and then use this little rubber bulb, you put it over here and you bring it up the last 20% or so to the pressure you want. It creates inflated areas, so you're off the ground. These open areas between your sleeping bag trap a pocket of air. So even though there's nothing here, it's still insulating. The other thing they claim is that your sleeping bag loft does not get compressed in these areas because there's no pressure on it. It hangs in there, so you have both air and sleeping bag loft. Whereas if you have a continuous mattress everywhere under you, the mattress is really the only insulation because your sleeping bag insulation is crushed. It's not working. So, insulation-wise, they claim this works very well. In my experience, yes, it does. It is not quite as comfortable as a regular sleeping pad, I'll admit it. But it's actually not bad. I'm 50 years old. I have slept on very hard ground with this and slept pretty well. You can sleep on your back, you can sleep on your front, you can sleep on your side. I would comment, it's very picky as to your height. I work on this. If I was about shorter than about 5'3", I'm not convinced that the inflated areas would be under your hips, your shoulders, the areas they're supposed to be. And if you were much taller than about 5'10", I suspect it might not work well either. So this would be something, if you're considering, try out and make sure it works for you. For an average height kind of person, they work pretty well. They are not crazy expensive, and they save an immense amount of space in your pack. So I like that. Okay, so that was the entire bottom section. I have a tarp as a shelter, I have an underlay, and I have a sleep system, and I have everything associated with that to set up and make myself a comfortable home. Let's go to the very top of the pack next. So there's a quick access pack up here at the top. And what do I carry in there is a vial of, these are waterproof, stormproof type matches, but they're in a waterproof container, and I carry a striker for them as well. You want as many ways as possible starting a fire. You really do. Okay, so matches. I carry a multi-tool. Gerber, again, you'll see throughout this, I like Gerber stuff. It's not always the best, but I think it's good for the price point. This is a, I don't know what particular one this is, Gerber suspension. It's a generally okay multi-tool. It's been very handy. There's a small saw, there's a knife blade, there's obviously the set of pliers, which can come in really handy sometimes. A couple of other things. I like it, strong enough for what I want, not crazy overpriced, not too big and bulky. I carry a compass, a really good one. This is a Sunto MC2D. This is the global, which means it's corrected for dip angle in an area where you can use it everywhere. I don't travel globally with this. I'm in North America, but it's still, for the extra $5, $10, get the good one. It's a base plate type compass, so it's good for map reading if you know how to do that appropriately. I suppose somebody would probably tell you you might be able to use this magnifying glass to start a fire. I wouldn't count on it. It's an awfully small magnifying glass, but you could try if you were stuck somewhere and really bored. It is, however, it's a very good compass. It has a pre-made declination offset. There's a little tiny key here on the lanyard you use to adjust that to your local declination, meaning you actually read true north references off this compass, which is very nice. It's luminous, so if we get sunlight on it, it's readable in the dark. It's got a nice, good mirror, and it's not quite as good as a Lensatic for getting really accurate compass shots, but with some practice you can be on within a degree to half a degree even with this, so good enough for anything I would do. So a good compass, in my opinion, is well worth it, and knowing how to use it. Oh, what else we have in here? Back to fire lighting again. I have a lighter. This is not just any lighter. This is a UST Trekker. This is a stormproof style. It's got a platinum catalyzer wire in it, so that gets hot as soon as it ignites, meaning that it's constantly reigniting the flame. It's a piezoelectric igniter, not a flint to wear out, and it's refillable. And it's in this really strong crush-proof shell. These are, not cheap, but in my experience work really well at a lot of different elevations, ambient pressure, refillable. Again, reliability is very important to me, so I got a good lighter. And then, finally, up on the top, I have a first aid pack. I won't go through absolutely everything in here, but I will point out a couple of things I carry. I like Ozonol for topical anesthetic and antiseptic. I carry some painkillers, some fairly hefty ones in case I've got something like a broken leg and I have to move out on it. I have antihistamines for possible serious allergic reaction. I do carry things like triangular bandages in here. I have vinyl gloves if I have to deal with something that's really dealing with a lot of trauma and blood. There's simple band-aids and things like that, fancier ones, larger size gauze dressings. I'm actually certified as a first aid attendant and do know how to use a lot of this. I also carry a couple of other things in here that are not exactly first aid, but this was a handy place to keep them and they're related to survival. One is a fire piston. This is again another way to start a fire. This is a cute little one. You basically put a little tiny bit of something ignitable inside the chamber here. Get it started, close off the valve, and then you slam down on this, and just like a diesel engine, it works through that compression, ignites the material here, something like char cloth or punk wood, and now you can use that glowing coal to get something started. There's nothing to wear out here, good forever. They are a little hard on your hand to use, but you can do it. This particular one, it's hollow in there, designed. You can also store an additional ferrocerium type rod in there. I had not done that at this point, but it wouldn't be a bad idea. We'll talk about ferro rods. I've already shown you one. There's going to be a couple of others in the pack as we go along. Okay, so fire piston. I have some more Spectran type guy line in here, and that's because I have a space blanket in here. Not one of those really cheap little $3.99 kind of ones. There are ones that are bigger, they're a heavier, stronger mylar. They're capable of being reused several times. It's bright orange on one side. I'm not going to pull it out here, but it is big enough to actually make a shelter out of as well if you have to. So that's if I needed to help use that to make a shelter. I also have a water purifier. This is a Sawyer Squeeze. Just lost the bag there. But you can use this gravity feed, or you can fill that bag and squeeze on it, and you get purified water through here. I also do carry iodine tablets for water purification, and a couple of other things. So, yeah, so some basic first aid and survival stuff. Again, that depends on your skill set, what kinds of injuries you want to be prepared for, but for its size, I think I'm pretty well equipped here, and I know how to use everything in there in a range of circumstances. Okay. So that was it for the topmost compartment. Let's go over to the side here. So on this side, I have a machete. I was never very big on machetes. And I really have to give credit to somebody with a YouTube channel under the handle Really Big Monkey 1 down in, I believe he's in northern Georgia. And he's had some very interesting videos on his channel, including a couple in particular focused on different kinds of machetes and where they were useful. And he convinced me that there were places and times when a machete was better or more useful than either an axe or a hunting knife, and that there was enough utility in it to make me start to carry one. So there's different styles. I've now, since my going into the machete world, have tried a couple types. This one is what's called a kukri style. So it's got a bent blade. This area here is for fine carving. This is more for chopping. I like this style because it does not have a saw tooth back here. This means I can use it for batoning, so I can put this on a piece of wood and use another piece of wood to beat it. Sometimes places where the axe would be useful, but maybe you don't have the axe, and you can use this to cut. A couple things to note, it does have a lanyard. I added this. A lanyard is really important because that's how you hook it up, such that your hand cannot go forward onto the blade when it slips. Also, you'll notice that is paracord, but it's a bright orange paracord. This is a special stuff called fire cord, and the core of this is a flammable impregnated material. You can use a little bit of that as an emergency fire starter. Why would I use that on here? Well, because there's also a little pouch on here. I have a ferro rod and a striker. So, and this actually came with the machete, but if it didn't, it'd be a good place to put it. So, this is a way to process wood for a fire. This is a way to start the fire. Here's some tinder for that. And a fair-sized diamond hone. I keep this razor sharp. I like to keep my knives really sharp. I find I may have less accidents from forcing them if they're really sharp. And life's easier, and you're sitting around in the evenings, it's something to do. Sharpen your knives. So, there we go. Machete, sharpener, and fire starter. I will point out this machete does come with shoulder straps as well, so I can either put it on my belt or I can attach the shoulder strap, which is carried in another pocket here, and sling it over my shoulder. I will just carry this if I'm just going to be out hiking for the day. The canteen also has a shoulder strap, and a lot of times it goes over one shoulder crosswise, so it doesn't flop around too much, and this goes over the other, and then I have a way to process wood, get a fire going, and water, and a way to cook, all just quickly slung on, and then they fit right back onto the pack. Okay. Also on that side, externally, is, let me get this off here. Okay. This, again, Gerber, not the best, but good value, small shovel. So this is kind of like a military trenching tool style. Again, there's a small, intentionally designed as a hammer type thing here. You can use this for cutting small ditches to avoid water getting into your shelter. You can use it when you need a hole for a bathroom. There's a lot of useful things to carry a small shovel around for. This can also be deployed more as a trenching tool. Right angles, like this. In my experience, this has been very strongly made. A lot of the sort of ones you see, the cheaper ones, are very weak and they will break. This has survived a lot of heavy use and has been worth the money. So, a shovel. You'll also notice the way I had that tucked in there, the drawstring and the loop, I put back over one of the lock connectors on the pack. So even if this falls out of the pocket, it's still dangling. I'm going to feel something bouncing around and dangling on the pack. I don't like things that can fall off without my knowing it. So, ways to tie things on. Let's go over to the other side of the pack here. Alright. On this side we have a collapsible trekking pole. Not a real good one. This one is, some stuff I have real expensive, some stuff I cheap out. I'm okay with the cheap trekking pole. It hasn't broken on me. It actually came with a set of cheap snowshoes. It's adjustable, 2 stages here. And not only is it adjustable, but this one has an anti-shock or so the anti-shock has got a big spring in it. So if you're doing something where you're really having to kind of squish up and down and put weight on it, you can do that. Or I can put it in the non-shock position. That's the shock position. Why is this? Hang on here. There we go. All right, non-shock position, shock position. Okay. There are nicer ones. There's ones that have a compass built in. There's ones that have a screw mount for your camera, so you can use them as a monopod. All very nice, but okay. I use this especially if I'm descending steep terrain. It's good for helping give your knees support. I'll use it sometimes ascending, but also I'll use this as a single tent pole with the tarp if I want to do a single pitch kind of shelter, which is one of my favorite kind of shelters. I don't have to cut a piece of wood. If I do want to do more of a lean-to style, I only have to cut one support. I can use this as a height marker. It's just a quick way to be able to have a tent pole as well as all those other things. So, trekking pole. And also secured to the pack. This particular one is called a Sven saw. It's a collapsible Swede saw. This is I think a 17-inch. If you want to cut sizable firewood, this thing is amazing. There are nicer things. I think the Silky Katana boys are really nice, but they're like $300. These are not crazy expensive. You can get spare blades for them. They pack up with a blade going inside in a way where there's nothing sharp sticking out. And they just take a minute. You come up with a nice triangular type saw. It tensions down. These cut through 12-inch, 14-inch wood like butter. And for a campfire for one person, cutting down 8-inch, 9-inch, 12-inch rounds of wood is really handy. So I really like this. It's lightweight. It's been great. This is the larger of the two Sven saws. I wouldn't probably get the smaller one. For the difference in weight, the bigger one is worth it. That's not quite it. We're not done on that side. We also have, yes, that's right, a fishing pole. Because it's on the outside of the pack, I figured this might get kind of roughed up and broken, so I bought a really cheap rod and reel combination. We'll get to the reel and the fishing gear in a moment. I think this was like 20 bucks or 25 bucks all in, including a bunch of lures. It actually has turned out to be an outstanding fishing rod and reel combination. It casts amazingly well for such a small one. It has been stuck on the outside of my pack for about 6 years now in all kinds of use, and the pack getting thrown around and bounced down gravel roads, and it has gotten me dinner countless numbers of times. So yeah, this was a super cheap Walmart ready to fish something or other. Seriously, it was like $20 for everything. Amazing. Totally worth having, because if you're out camping, A, it's maybe just fun to go fishing. B, if you're actually stuck out longer than you think, if you can get fish, it's a good source of food. Okay. So I think we're done with everything on the outside there. Yep, don't see anything else out here. There is a little tiny, almost a hidden compartment here. And in there, I keep a couple of really small, lightweight things. One is yet another diamond hone. If you're counting, that is the third sharpening stone I carry. This one is a fairly expensive one. It's a good one. It's because you can handle this one nicely. It's actually really good for getting at both sides of stuff. This is good on the axe. It's good on the machete. It's good on everything. All three of them work, but it's nice to have a really good one like that. What else do I carry in here? This is a charging cable for my cell phone. I use my cell phone as the interface to my satellite communicator and a couple of other things. So it's important that I be able to charge my cell phone when I'm out there. And we'll talk about where the power supply is later, but charging cable for cell phone. And then power supply, I said, here we go. This is a small, it's about a 2.5 watt folding solar panel, which charges a set of AA nickel metal hydride batteries, and it has a USB out port. So when these are charged up, I can use that port to charge my phone. I can also just directly charge these batteries, and anything that I carry that uses AA batteries, I can now just put in here to charge up and use. Let's get into the main compartment. Hat with a sun brim to keep rain out of my eyes and sun out of my eyes. Military style poncho. Self-explanatory, but you can use it as a ground sheet. You can sit on it. You can wrap your sleeping bag with it. You can do all kinds of things. These are really well-made material. I've sprayed mine for increased water repellency because they're not as waterproof as you would hope, but they do a pretty good thing. You could even use this by itself to make a decent small tarp shelter. Again, worth practicing if you're going to do that to learn how to do it. Warm wear. This is one of those fold up on itself, down-filled, I don't know if you call it a jacket or a shirt. This one is in a 400 or a 450 weight, and I have used it for years, and it's beginning to show its age. But a 450 or 400 weight for me is about right. 600 weights are too warm for a lot of things. This packs down to nothing, and I have gotten years of service out of this. I love it, but it's finally starting to show its age. So, what else do we have? For colder weather, I have a toque. And not just any toque, but this one has built-in LED lights. It's fantastic in hunting season. You're stuck in the dark. This works on little CR2032 button cells. They're good for about 40 to 50 hours continuous runtime, which is easily an entire year of heavy use. So once a year I pop new batteries in there. I've only once ever had the battery start to go low on a trip. I have some cook set stuff here. So in here we have, what do we have? Knife, fork, spoon. These are collapsible type ones. Button there. So these are plastic. Again, lightweight spatula. This is a insulated cup with a little neoprene sleeve. This is part of a cook set, and you'll see later why it's not inside the cook set. And I use a little mesh bag to trap all this together. And often, I'll have some other small things, like if I want spices or something, I'll have little tiny packages of spices that go inside that. Okay, cook set. Let's get to that. So this is I think this is what, a Peak 1 Soloist GSI. And it has seen years of use. It is blackened. Pinnacle Soloist. So, the lid has little tiny drain holes, so you can use it as a strainer, which is nice. Same thing here. It flips upside down and clips over that coffee cup thing to use that as your cup with a lid. The reason the cup isn't in there is because I have other things in here. The first is, be careful putting this down. This has got soot all over it. The first is in this little bag here. This is a beer can methyl hydrate stove. These are easy to make yourself. There's different designs. This is the type known as a Pepsi can stove usually. They work amazingly well. They use very little methyl hydrate. This is great like if you're inside a cabin and you just need a quick way to cook, to boil some water, make some breakfast. Even if you're out in the brush and you don't want to have time to start a fire, you just want a really quick meal, 25 mils of methyl hydrate, you're good to go in one of these. So, and they weigh next to nothing. So that's stuff down inside there. what if you're going to be out in the woods for a very long time? What if you're going to have to be out there a week or 2 weeks cooking all your meals? You don't want to run out of fuel. So, down inside here is this is called a solo stove. They're designed for things like wood, biofuels, so small wood twigs, pencil-sized stuff. These are a downdraft type thing, so you pile the stuff up, you ignite it, it actually sucks the airflow down into this gap here. Fresh air comes up the outside, it re-injects through a series of holes here, and you get this blue wood gas flame as opposed to the improperly incomplete burning yellow flame. When this is going, it's hot, it's easy to control the flame level, and a small handful of twigs will cook a meal. I have done as much as 6 days in the brush doing all the cooking for 2 people, 2 meals a day on nothing but this and just some little scraps of wood that I could gather in a few minutes every meal. It tends to get a little dirty and sooty, so you want to keep that in its bag. But, and they make them, this is the stainless steel one. For more money you can get the titanium one, it's lighter weight. I didn't feel that rich. Stainless steel has been good enough for me. But works really well. You do have to tend it constantly. You can't leave it alone for more than about 60 seconds without the flame level going up and down. So, bit of a work. Alright, so, with the Keith titanium canteen being one cook pot, this gives me a second cook pot. So one can have a meal, one can have hot water if I want to do that. This bag is also waterproof lined. You can use this as your little dishwashing container if you need to. One thing I realized I didn't point out is how do I use the methyl hydrate stove? This is the top burner ring from the wood stove, and I use this as my pot holder. The methyl hydrate stove fits nicely inside of there on something, and now the pot is neatly suspended above that. You could pile up some rocks or things on the side, but it'd be a little clumsy. This is really easy. I don't have to carry anything extra, and it gives me a built-in pot stand that works with both stoves. What's next? This is an InReach. It's a satellite communicator. This is an old style version one. This uses AA cells. Why do I like that? Because I can charge AA's on my little solar pack, put them in here, and I'm good to go. The cell phone communicates via this, so I can send and receive text messages via satellite anytime. If I'm in a real disaster, I don't need this cell phone. There's a lock here, and I can trigger an SOS. This is the equivalent of an aircraft EPIRB going off. This will trigger an emergency response. You don't want to do that unless it's a really life and death situation you can't solve yourself, but you can do that. Okay. One set of gloves. These are the fold-over mitten glove style, leather patches on the palms. I can use this pack any time of year. Sometimes it's cold. Gloves are good. Thermal underwear, so long thermal pants, long thermal top. These are in fancy camo colors to make me look trendy. I like to wear these at night because my clothes have gotten all sweaty during the day. This is a dry, comfortable, this is this dry weave wicking stuff. It's very dry and comfortable, and in cold weather, it adds to the thermal capacity of my sleeping bag. This is a night vision scope. The clever thing about this one, and one of the reasons I got this one, is it's actually piezoelectric powered. I just have to squeeze this to generate electricity to make this work. It's good in even light starlight, very easy to see game. If I'm going through the brush, I want to see what's going on. I use this boating as well at night to look for deadheads, things like that. And I don't have to worry about a power source for it. So something I like carrying in there. I don't use all that often for other than just kind of for fun, for watching animal life in the dark, but it is nice to have. Okay. Now we're getting down into food. These are MREs, military meal ready to eat. I usually carry, depends, normally there are 3 of these in here. I see this time I've also got some more traditional Alpenair dried stuff. I think my last trip out I was planning to eat that and I didn't. So there are 3 MREs total. I'm not going to pull the 3rd one out and show you. There's some other clothing. There's another t-shirt, another pair of heavy socks, another pair of underwear. Again, if I'm suddenly out in the brush for a couple extra days, it's nice to have all that. And then, remember I had that fishing rod? Well, I have a nice non-stick fry pan. So this is good for, obviously, fish, other stuff. It does fit on top of either the little wood stove or the little methyl hydrate stove, and it's got a folding in handle. There's also a washcloth inside a Ziploc bag and a viscose type mountain dry style towel. More for me than for dishes. Okay. While we're here in the main compartment, hidden away in the back is this. Yes, that's a single shot 22 rifle. 22 LR, although you can fire short or long in here as well. You'll notice the action is open, magazine, there's no magazine, but the chamber is empty. I'm not going to cycle it closed. It has good aperture iron sights, which are hand adjustable, both for elevation and windage. You don't need any special tools. This is a very accurate little rifle. It's extremely reliable. There's very little to go wrong with it. If things did go wrong with it, my guess is you could probably fix it yourself, anything that I've seen on there, and it weighs all of 3 pounds. I get a couple of grouse every year with this because it's what I happen to have with me when a grouse pops out in the brush, and I've got my pack and I get dinner. So this is one of the Chiappa Little Badgers. Really like it. You can actually, this bag it comes in has its own carrying straps. You can actually slip this over your back, under your jacket or something like that, and it fits right in there, easy to carry. Takes a few seconds to get to it like that, but it means that you can carry it without it having any sort of sling. And it just hides beautifully. This actually goes down inside the hydration pouch pocket on this pack. Okay. I do believe that's it for what's inside. So now let's go into some of the side pockets. Over on this side we have, let's start off, flashlight. This is a Phoenix LD22, extremely bright. I think that's actually the low mode. Yeah, there we go. Also has a strobe effect. You can put it on and strobe it up like into the tree canopy if you're trying to signal for a helicopter in the dark or something like that. Nickel metal hydride AA cells. That means if I need to use the satellite communicator and the set of AA's in the charger are dead and the set in the communicator are dead, there's usually a good set still in here. The point is, with 3 sets of those, generally for wherever I need them, there's at least one functional set. Redundancy, very good. This is the carrying strap for the machete mentioned earlier. This is a windscreen for the stove. Not so much needed for the wood stove, but it's really handy for the metal hydrate stove. It's just super heavyweight aluminum foil. You can see it's blackened from years of use. It's got a little cutout where your pot handle can go through, and you can just wrap that around your stove. I said there were going to be more ferro rods. Here we go. This is my major one. This is a Strike Force. It's a massive ferro rod. I'm not going to ignite it here because I'd be sending hot sparks onto things like my sleeping pad. Not a good idea. But this has been used for years. Incredibly effective way to start a fire once you know how to use it. And this actually has a little storage compartment where I keep things like, this is actually a Vaseline impregnated cotton ball as an emergency fire starter. If I can't get good local tinder, or I'm just too tired or cold or whatever, take that out, shred it, ignite this, and you have an instant fire. And it's going to burn for 4 or 5 minutes really hot to get something else going. So my main way of starting fires. The other side, top outer pocket, the promised reel for the fishing rod. These two film containers, this is actually 127 style film, which is why it looks funny to some of you. Various fishing lures, bobbers, stuff like that to use with that. Not a big selection, but big enough, and it's good for the areas I'm in. And another strap over here, this one clips on to the canteen. And finally, the bottom pocket. This is methyl hydrate for the little methyl hydrate stove. This is good for me for about 7 days of 2 meals a day. That is around 100, about 80 to 100 mils. I wonder if it says on here. I don't think it does. Nalgene, doesn't leak, strong, reliable, doesn't leach. So, stove fuel. More cotton-soaked or Vaseline-soaked cotton balls. So a whole bunch of them compressed down here into a 35mm film container. I really don't use those if I have to, but once in a while I do. Another group of that, there's about 7 or 8 in each of these, so it's like 14 or 16 total cotton balls. That's more than I use in a year normally, so you don't want to run short. And there was a 22, so we have 100 rounds of 22 ammunition, good for rabbit, grouse, small game. Again, if I'm out for a lot longer than I expect for some reason, I can't get out of an area, I have a way to make sure I get myself some dinner. And with that, I think that's pretty much it and complete. So again, this is what works for me, and that I know I am good in most conditions, most times. You'll have different ideas. It'll depend on your local weather and what's available and your choices of comfort versus functionality. But I hope that gave you some ideas.